Yeah, we are live. We are live. We are live. One more again, baby. We here. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live and we ready to give you some game tonight. We ready to give you some game tonight. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You already know this is the day that the Lord has made. We're rejoicing and we're glad in it. I'm actually coming on a few minutes early. We're going to get started at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So just want to make sure everything is working fine. I'm kind of using a few pieces of new technology like I did last night and tonight. So just got to make sure that we are cooking with gas. So good evening, everyone. Welcome. I want you to come on in and please hit that like button, hit that share button. I want you to tag Lolly Dolly everybody and let them know your boy, Ramon Preston, he's back for part 2 of our masterclass on how to underwrite creative real estate deals. So if you want to learn some of the techniques of creative real estate investing, if you want to learn the secret sauce behind getting deals that could really put you in a different position financially, you need to learn underwriting. Okay, underwriting is the game changer. It is the secret sauce for real estate investing. I promise you, once you become a master at underwriting, it really don't matter if you got money, it don't matter if you got credit, if you got tax returns and credentials and paperwork, none of that don't matter. What matters most when it comes to real estate investing for you is your skill set, your mastery of underwriting deals. So please do me a quick favor, hit the like button. Excuse me. Let me clear my throat before 8:00 come. Hit the like button, hit the share button, tag Lolly Dolly everybody and let them know that your boy, I am live, my squad, my team, they will be in the chats on the platforms that we're on. So of course, if you have any questions while we're live, don't hesitate to put the questions in the comments. We're going to do everything we can to answer your questions. If you're coming on, joining me live again, hit like, hit share, put in the comments what city, what state, what area you represent, where you're watching us from. I love to know anytime somebody comes on to join me, I love to know where they're watching us from. So please put in the comments where you're watching your boy from, what city you're watching me from, what state, what country. I don't know. You might be like Elon Musk. You might be on Mars or something. What planet you're on? Let your boy know. Okay, we're just a minute away from getting started on part 2 of our masterclass on how to underwrite creative real estate deals. Okay, so I want to say again, thank you for joining me. If you did not make it last night on part 1, you can always go back to my YouTube page, my Facebook page. You can rewatch yesterday's masterclass. We took about an hour. We did a deep dive on the first part. And tonight I'm going to give you a quick overview. And then I want to get right into part 2 of our masterclass on how to underwrite creative real estate deals. Just the FYI for all of you that are watching, just in case you got to drop off before I finish, in the description of this video, you will see a couple links and you will see a couple phone numbers. So one of those links is to a free worksheet. So we have a 4-page underwriting worksheet that we provide for our students and anybody that's in our community. Even when we host our meetups here every 2 weeks, we provide this creative real estate worksheet. And this worksheet is actually a guide to help you become a master at underwriting creative real estate deals. Of course, if you're not a creative real estate investor, if you just invest in real estate conventionally, doing it the traditional way, you could still use this underwriting technique. And you're going to learn, if not all tonight, excuse me, over the course of you becoming better and better at underwriting, you're going to learn that knowing how to underwrite deals, conventional deals or creative deals, you're going to learn that underwriting is the secret sauce, baby. It is what's going to always make you an asset to wholesalers, to real estate investors, and to anybody in the community. So shout out to Memphis, Tennessee. I see Memphis, Tennessee is in the house. Thank you for joining us. Fayetteville, North Carolina, Fort Bragg is in his house. I appreciate you all. Anybody else that's watching us from any city, any state, any country, any planet, put in the comments, let us know where you're watching us from. So let's get started. Tonight, part 2 of our masterclass on how to underwrite creative real estate deals. Now, as I mentioned last night, this masterclass on how to create real estate deals is really on how to underwrite creative real estate deals. It's really about you becoming a master at both phases of underwriting. So I break my underwriting up because of the type of real estate investing that I do, which I'll explain it in a minute. But I break mine up into 2 phases. So we have phase 1, which I consider preliminary underwriting. This is the underwriting that I need to do even before I start making calls, sending emails out or mailers, because of the type of acquisition strategy that I use as a creative real estate investor. I want to conduct preliminary underwriting. In other words, I want to know that it's a deal before it's a deal. I want to understand the value of this call that I'm making, this email that I'm sending. I want to make sure it ain't just a junk list of names and numbers and email addresses that I'm reaching out to. I don't want to have 10,000 names, numbers, and email addresses, and I don't even know if 100 of them are even worth anything when it comes to my investment criteria. So preliminary underwriting is phase 1. Then once we make contact and we're able to determine that a potential deal is there, we conduct post-contact underwriting. So these are the 2 phases. If you were with me last night, just a quick overview, this is how I describe underwriting. So you can take a screenshot of this or you can write it down. Underwriting, to me, describes the process of identifying the financial risk on a deal, okay? And quantifying those risks as costs. So when I think of underwriting, I'm thinking about being able to look at a piece of property that I have identified that meets my investment criteria, and I'm going to identify all the financial risks associated to that property that I'm looking at. And I'm going to quantify those risks, meaning that I'm going to gather certain data points, I'm going to gather certain metrics and certain numbers, and when I bring them together and do my math and do my calculations, I want to determine if this piece of real estate is a good deal for me to enter, and I want to be able to know how I can exit and make money. So when you identify the financial risk on a deal and you quantify them as costs, you are essentially underwriting, and your costs are broken up into two components. So you have your cost of acquisition. How much does it cost for me to actually acquire the property? What are all the costs associated to me acquiring it? And the second component, my cost of disposition. How much is it going to cost for me to dispose it? Whether I'm fixing and flipping, whether I'm buying and holding, whether I'm wholesaling, or whether I am doing some other creative exit. I want to be able to determine the cost of acquisition, the cost of disposition, total those costs to see if it's a good enough deal for me to invest my time, my effort, and my resources. So that's how we describe underwriting. And again, if you have any questions, you can always put the questions in the comments. I will do my best to answer those questions. I'm looking in the chat. So if you put any questions in the comments, it should hit my chat, and I'm gonna do my best to answer those questions, okay? So now let's get into what we went over yesterday, because this was the preliminary underwriting process. Now, just to contextualize or make the type of underwriting that I'm teaching you make sense, I want it to make sense to you. I want to contextualize it so that you can understand My underwriting is primarily for buying pre-foreclosures subject to, okay? So again, if you don't buy pre-foreclosures, if you don't acquire properties using creative strategies like subject to, you still have to learn how to underwrite deals. All I'm saying to you as a creative real estate investor, if you're looking for a way to get into real estate with a low cost of entry, and you're looking for the low-hanging fruit just to get your feet wet and to get some momentum, buying pre-foreclosure subject to is a low cost of entry. It's low-hanging fruit, and you don't need a whole lot of money. You need no credit. You need no credentials or tax returns. You don't need none of that to buy pre-foreclosure subject to. So I want you to contextualize and keep in mind what I'm sharing with you tonight in terms of preliminary underwriting and post-contact underwriting. These underwriting skills work perfectly if you are looking to buy properties subject to. If you're looking to use that creative strategy, this underwriting is going to be a game changer for you. And guess what? If your subject to transactions are primarily pre-foreclosures or some level of distressed property, this underwriting is a game changer for you. Okay, so I think we're all on the same page. All right, so let's look at what's important before you start conducting any underwriting as a real estate investor, as a wholesaler, as a deal finder. Maybe you're just on an acquisition team working with a real estate investor. Here's what you want to do. Okay, you want to be clear on the buy box. The buy box is the investment criteria. You got to be clear on that. If you're the end buyer or the investor, you need to know what your buy box is. And again, I have this information in the worksheet about what a buy box is. A buy box is basically your investment criteria. What type of real estate do you want to buy? So for me, I'm buying pre-foreclosure subject to. So when I think about my buy box, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath average. I have about 5 top counties in Metro Atlanta that I look into. I have another bottom 5. So I have about 10 to 15 counties in Metro Atlanta that I look into, but I have a top 5. I want it to be individually owned. I want it to be, no more than 30 years old. That's my buy box. So if you are planning on being the creative real estate investor, the end buyer, you need to have a buy box. What is your investment criteria? If you're a deal finder, or if you are working with an investor and you're part of the acquisition team, or if you are a wholesaler, or if you're all of the above, you need to know what the investor's buy box is. So if you just want to get a finder's fee as a deal finder, or if you want to get an assignment fee as a wholesaler, or if you want to get a commission working on a team for acquisitions with an investor, you need to be clear about what their buy box is, because you don't want to be sending them deals or out there looking for deals that the investor don't want to buy. It doesn't meet their criteria. So you want to be clear on the buy box. What happens is once you are clear on the buy box, and once you are clear about what type of investing you want to do, for me, it's creative, it's pre-foreclosures, it's subject to. That's at the top of my list. Because you can get clear with that, now I already know here what the profile of the homeowner or the potential seller looks like. Because if I'm buying pre-foreclosure subject to, and I know what type of properties I'm looking for, I pretty much have a good idea what this avatar or what the profile of this person looks like. They're probably stressed. They probably going through. They're behind on their bills. They might be going through divorce. They may have had some sickness or some situation that came up in their life. A life event has happened. So I already have an idea what they're going through. Why is that important? Because it helps me to prepare to deal with this person better. They might be volatile. They might be resentful. They might be delusional, but at least I can develop a level of empathy and compassion and concern for that type of person because I know who I'm dealing with. And guess what? I have a good idea of what type of house that is in terms of the condition. It may be deferred maintenance. It may not be updated. It may be a lot of problems with it because of what that owner is going through. And remember this, especially if you're looking at pre-foreclosures, this owner is not a seller by choice. I want you to understand what I'm saying. This owner is not a seller by choice. A lot of times this owner is a seller by force because their circumstances are forcing them to become a seller. So again, even before you get into the underwriting, get clear on this. What kind of investor you want to be, what kind of strategies you want to use, what your buy box is, so you can have a better profile of the type of person who owns this property and the type of property this person owns. That changes the game for you as a deal finder, as a wholesaler, as an acquisition team member, and as an end buyer if you're the real estate investor. Just that alone, what I shared with you, can change the way you do real estate investing moving forward. Okay. So now that you have that, you can start becoming a master at your preliminary underwriting process. And remember, this underwriting process that I'm giving you, the preliminary underwriting and the post-contact underwriting, it is primarily for subject to transactions, creative transactions. So some of the details are going to be different, or some of the data points are going to be different. But as far as the preliminary underwriting process, I have 6 data points that I look at. So this is the data that I want to gather. This is the information that I want to gather. Remember the definition for underwriting: identifying the financial risk of a deal and quantifying those risks as costs. So how am I going to identify the risk? Well, I have to gather certain data, certain information. So here are 6 data points. We went over this last night. I'll give you a quick overview so we can go to the second phase. Data point number 1, I want a property address. So if I'm looking for pre-foreclosures, I'm going to go to a website or several websites or the county sites. I'm going to pull, or I might buy a list, and I'm going to buy a list of addresses or find a list of addresses that have my buy box in it, the properties that I know I want, right? So let's just, for example, say you want to get a list of 100 property addresses that meet your investment criteria. So you got 100 property addresses of 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Some of them may be 2-bedroom, some of them may be 4 or 5, but average, you're looking for 3-2. You got a list of 100 properties, right? So that's data point number 1. You have a list of 100 addresses for properties that meet your buy box. Okay, that's data point number 1. Data point number 2 is you're going to find or use a real estate investment platform. Last night I told you a free one is PropWire. PropWire is free. So you can go to propwire.com and use that website for free. You can actually find properties on PropWire. But let's just assume you went somewhere else and got these 100 addresses. Well, you're just going to take those 100 addresses, you're going to drop them on this real estate investors platform, because there you're going to be able to start the process of gathering these other data points. All right. Data point number 2 is ownership info. That's important for me because I want to purchase properties that are owned by individuals, not by entities. So that's a data point for me. Length of ownership. Why do I want to know the length of ownership of this person? Because it's helping me to tell a story. If they owned a house for 20 years and they got a 30-year mortgage, doesn't that tell a story? Or if they just bought the house 8 months ago or a year ago and now they're in foreclosure, isn't that telling you a story? So a lot of times this data is telling you a story of the profile of this person and that property. So it's helping you to identify more with their motivations or their problems and the things that they're dealing with, so that you can have the right solution to provide for them. So data point number 2 is ownership info. Length of ownership. I want to know that because I want to build a story. And I'll explain why it's important too, because this looks like it's a lot of data. It looks like it takes a lot of time, but you should be able to gather this information for each property in 20 or 30 seconds. Because remember, if you got 100 addresses, you can't take 20 minutes doing this. You got to learn how to do this in 20 seconds because it's preliminary underwriting. You hadn't even called nobody. You ain't even sent a letter out. You ain't mailed nothing. You ain't emailed. You ain't text. You ain't even knocked on the door. You're just making sure that the properties you are going to skip trace and market to, that they meet your criteria and that there's some opportunity for a deal. Okay. So number 2, ownership info, length of ownership. Data point number 3, this is where it gets real good. You want to know the current loan balance. Why do I want to know the current loan balance? Anybody know that? You know why? Because if I'm going to buy this property subject to, I'm taking over that existing loan. So I'm going to assume the responsibility for that existing loan, whether I buy and hold that property and rent it, or whether I fix and flip it. I still, until I flip it or sell it or whatever, I'm still going to be responsible for that existing loan. Therefore, I want to know what the loan balance is. And these platforms will give you that data. I also want to know what the ARV is. What is the after repair value? Or what is the resale value? I gave an example last night, a real case study example. For example, let's say if the loan balance was $100,000, and let's say if the ARV or the resale value is $240,000, that means the equity spread is $140,000. So that data point alone is letting me know, okay, it's equity there. It may fit the criteria for an exit strategy that I know can work for me. So that's data point number 3. Data point number 4, I want to know the PITI, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. I want to know what that dollar amount is, or have a rough idea of what the dollar amount. Then I want to put that against the GRV, the gross rent value. What is the rent rate for that house if I rented it? So for example, if the PITI is 900 and the rent rate is 1800, that means my cash spread is 900. So again, if you're doing this within a 20-30 second window, you don't have all the information, but you have enough to know just with these first 4 data points that, man, if I mess around and buy this property, it's going to be a good deal, whether I rent it or whether I fix it and flip it. Do y'all understand how that plays a very important role in you determining how good a deal is? Now, if you did that with this same property, which the example I'm giving you is a real property, but let's just say you were a deal finder. Let's say you was a deal finder. You were not wholesaling. You're not on an acquisition team. You're not the investor or the end buyer. But let's just say you knew how to underwrite properties and you found this property and you did the due diligence just with those data points. And you called that owner about their house and they decided to do a deal with you. Imagine how valuable that contract would be if you had just that ability to see what some people might not see. Okay. So data point number 5, I want to know the interest rate, because remember, if you're taking over a loan, you want to know what the interest rate of that loan is. I want to know the loan term, because remember, if the length of ownership is, let's say if they've owned it for 10 years and it's a 30-year loan, they've already paid for 10 years, at least maybe 7 or 8 if they're behind a couple of years. But I just want to know that information. I want to know the loan type, because some loans you probably don't want to take over. Some loans you might not even want to deal with, but I still want to know the type of loan it is, because remember, even if it's not you that's going to purchase this property or do the deal, if you take that to another investor, try to wholesale it or whatever, they're going to want to know this. And the more information or data you have, the better it is, the better it's going to be for you. Okay. Data point number 6, I'm looking for the HOA. Is it a HOA? Are there liens on the property? Are there bankruptcies? Because all of that tells me a story. So this is the preliminary underwriting. Now, we went over this last night in depth. So let's go to the next one, because let's assume you did that preliminary underwriting. Remember the example, you got 100 addresses. You put all 100 of them inside of that real estate investors platform, right? You get those data points for all 100 of them, and you determine, okay, 70 of these properties meet my criteria. It's meat on the bone, whether I rent it or flip it. I know it's something there. It's something that I want to work with. Now you just skip trace those 70 properties so that you can pay to get the email addresses associated to the property and the phone numbers associated to the property. So when you do that, what's next? Here's what's next. It's time to make calls now. It's time to make contact. So I'm showing you when I'm underwriting pre-foreclosures for a potential subject to, I go through that preliminary process first to make sure that my team, I have an in-person team, when they're making calls, when they're emailing, when they're knocking on doors, when they're trying to generate a lead, I know that they're doing it with properties that meet the criteria that we can buy. So if they have 70 properties that they're marketing to, emailing, calling, texting, sending mailers to, I know out of those 70 properties, almost all of them have some meat on the bone that we can do something with. There is an exit strategy we can use because I went through that preliminary underwriting process. So I know it's something there. So the next step is calls and contacts. You should have some professional script. So when you're sending text messages to these leads, you need to have a script. You need to have some script that's like clearly specifies and explains who you are and what you do. So that script needs to be said when you text. You need to have that script if somebody answers the phone and when you call. There needs to be a script when you email, when you leave a voice message. If you send a mailer or a letter, there needs to be a script for that. If you leave that and someone calls you back, you need to use the script to explain to them. You need to have a script, and your script should have a greeting, an opening. You should have some questions if someone responds. There needs to be some fact-finding questions. This is going to be important if you're going to be successful, all right? So make calls, contacts, use a script. I created a 10-step process for subject to deals. So what happens is, if you just went through the preliminary underwriting process and you have a list of leads that you're preparing to call and make contact with, especially if it's a pre-foreclosure, a subject to transaction, you need to know what the proper steps are that you should take if someone responds and says they want to do business with you. You should know that even if it's not creative or subject to. But if it's creative, if it's pre-foreclosures, subject to, if it's that type of transaction, you need to be connected to somebody or people who know what they're doing, or you need to know what you're doing. Okay, so we do have that 10-step process that we use. And I just wanted to show you the first few steps. So step one of that 10-step is to generate a lead. Well, we've done that if we did our due diligence with the preliminary underwriting. So we generate the lead. Number two, we make the initial contact. So a lot of times, if you don't get somebody when you reach out to them, they might reach back out to you because they heard something on the voicemail. They read the letter. They got the postcard. They read the text, and they respond to you because, again, the type of properties that we are marketing to are distressed properties, and the homeowners are in distress. So they may not have as many options as a traditional homeowner who's selling their property on the open market. Okay, so we're going to make the initial call. Once we make the initial call, if or when we make contact, there are certain facts that we have to gather at that point. There are certain facts you have to gather. So we have a property questionnaire for sellers. So for example, if we reach out and we make contact with somebody, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to gather facts. Now, what facts are we going to gather? Well, we're going to gather more supporting facts based on the initial facts that we gathered with our data points in our underwriting. So we may ask the homeowner, how far are you in arrears? Do you know of any liens? What issues you're having with the home? Are there any repairs? What is the bank saying to you? Do you have a letter showing that? What's your recent bank statement? We want to ask those questions. Why? Because we're trying to gather facts. How much money are you looking to walk away with? These are all questions because we want to move into the post-contact underwriting to get an even better idea of how much money we can make in this deal, and of course, how we can help people in this process. So we're going to gather the facts. Now, when we're gathering the facts, we're preparing for step 5 to schedule a visit because we want to go physically visit the property. My team and I, we've seen it where we're on the phone. We done got all this information. They emailing us copies of the mortgage statements and giving us passwords to look at stuff, telling us all the numbers. And they're like, yeah, all we need is carpet and a little paint. And then you get to the house and half the house missing. You get what I'm saying? Like, we done seen this happen. So either you or somebody, if you're remote and you're in another state, then you need to have somebody on the ground that can go and vet the property. And remember, I'm not necessarily wholesaling, so I'm not doing business the way maybe a wholesaler would do remotely. I'm here primarily in Metro Atlanta, so we could get to the property, or my team can go and we can preview, or we could send our contractor. Most of the time, our team members are going because they're going with the contracts and the documents that need to be signed. But again, when we are gathering the facts, if we get to that point where we're talking to somebody and they're open to our offer, we're going to ask more questions over the phone. We're going to get more information. And we're going to schedule a visit for step 5. All right. But step 4 would be the post-contact underwriting. So let's just assume we're on the phone with somebody. They give us more information. We already have a good idea that this could be a pretty decent deal. Why? Because remember, we did the preliminary. We have an idea what the cash spread might be if we bought and held it. We have an idea what the equity spread could be if we bought it, fixed it, and flipped it. Or if we did some other creative deal like a lease option or maybe a wrap or something. I don't know, but at least we already have an idea. So by the time we make contact, by the time we start gathering more information, we've scheduled a visit to go physically see the property. And when we go see the property, we're going to bring a contract because we're prepared to sign if we don't email them once we get them on the phone. But sometimes it's such a quick turnaround. We'll just say we'll be there in the morning and we're coming with a contract so we can sign it because they've already told us over the phone what they want to walk away with, what type of help they need to transition. We've told them what the process was. And now we just want to confirm all the costs associated to this deal. This is where the post-contact underwriting comes in at. So with your post-contact, why am I saying post-contact? Because if you're doing all this before you even get a deal, you just wasting time. You're doing all this, man, I'll do this and I'll do that. You ain't got no deal. You got to get a deal first. And the deal is really not the deal until you contract it. But at least if you make contact and you get some verbal commitment and you have a schedule plan to go there and to get them to sign the contract, at least you got something going. But don't be hypothetical in this stuff, okay? Unless you're just doing your exercises. So the post-contact underwriting, that means I've contacted the owner. They are open to my strategy for a subject to transaction. I've explained everything to them. They've told me what their expectations are. We have some agreement, and it's dependent upon us coming to the property, making sure the house is still there. And once we're there, we're going to get contracts and documents signed. But even before we go there, we're gathering other information. How far are you behind? What's your monthly mortgage? What is your bank What does your mortgage statement say? What's the bank saying? Are there any other liens? Give me as much information as you got. Let me know what's going on. And then we can conduct this post-contact underwriting. Now, when you're conducting this phase of underwriting, you want to determine your costs. There are two costs you want to determine. Number one, you want to determine your cost of acquisition. How much is it going to cost for me to acquire the property, right? Number two, I want to determine my cost of disposition. Why is that important? Because I need to determine my exit before I enter the deal. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? I know I'm going hard and fast right now, but do y'all understand what I'm saying? You should not get into a deal. You should not enter a deal and you don't even know the exit. You can't buy no property and hope you can rent it or hope you can fix and flip it, especially if you're buying pre-foreclosures or you're using strategies like subject to. You do not want to do that. You need to be very clear on everything before you even get in the deal. There's no contract that I sign that I'm not clear on what my potential cost of acquisition are and what my potential cost of disposition. Now, are there times when exceptions come up? Yeah, because when you do a title search, there could be a lien you didn't know about, or there could be something wrong with the house that you didn't know unless you got it inspected. So things can come up, but generally speaking, if you know your way around a deal and a house and certain aspects of the deal, you got a good idea of where you are. So I want to determine my cost of acquisition. So now if you're looking at pre-foreclosures and you're buying them subject to or other properties subject to, these are your typical costs of acquisition. So you're going to have costs because that's money going to the seller. In most cases, there may be something that you're going to give the seller. Okay. There may be arrears. They're behind in their mortgage. Okay. Closing costs. Obviously, they can't pay it. Sometimes maybe they will, but most times you're going to pay it. Okay. Commissions or assignments. If a wholesaler bring you this deal, you're going to pay them assignment. Okay. For me, I have team members that's a part of our acquisition. So guess what? They get commissions. So we got to pay them. Renovation. We got to get renovations. Those are costs. We may have carrying costs. If I know this might be a fix and flip, I may want to have at least 3 to 4 months of carrying costs just set aside so I can pay the bills as I go along. Okay, there may be some other costs, like you're going to have to get a new insurance policy. At least I'm going to get a new insurance policy. If you're going to get an inspection, there are other things that you might get. You might have to get a cleanup crew. You might have to get movers, cleanup movers. You might need a relocation company to help them. We provide those complimentary services, so we have other costs. And so now I know my total cost of acquisition. I can calculate that and roughly estimate. Like I was giving y'all a case study of a property that we actually did. I use it as a case study. And initially, when I did this part, before we were even under contract, when I did this part, I guesstimated that my total acquisition costs were going to be about $82,000. And this is real. This is real. We use this for our mentees and students. I actually came in at 78,000. So I was a little low. That was like the total cost of acquisition to acquire that property. But again, I was at 82. I was off 4,000. I was below that 4,000, but I was close. So I had a good idea to see, okay, wow, that's going to help me with my exit strategy. Because if I buy it and I think I want to hold it and rent it, maybe I don't want $78,000 tied into no doggone property just to get $400-500 of cash flow a month. I probably want to flip it and get all my money back, my 78 plus whatever extra. So you understand that? But I also want to look at my cost of disposition. So if I'm going to sell the property, I'm going to have closing costs. That's typically about 6%. I'm going to have closing costs. I'm sorry. Closing costs are going to be maybe 3.5%. Let's just say 3.5%. My commissions are going to be 6%. But then I have my mortgage. Remember in that case study, if I bought that property and flipped it, that was $100,000 loan balance that would have to be paid off. And then if I bought and hold it or rented it, what would be the cost associated to buying it and holding it? So at least I can look at this profile and determine what is the best exit strategy for me. All right. And then I can start doing my calculations. So I could take my total cost of acquisition. Boom. I'll take my total cost of disposition. And then I could determine, okay, what exit strategy am I going to use? So if I fix it and flip it and sell it for this number and deduct the disposition costs and deduct the acquisition costs, what am I going to net? I can know that for my exit strategy, right? If I bought it, fixed it, and rented it, or did some other exit strategy, I could look at my total cost of acquisition, disposition, and determine what exit strategy would work. So I have my exit strategy minus all of costs, disposition and acquisition, and I could determine my ROI. Now, again, I have other worksheets to show you some exit strategies that you can actually use. And I'm not going to go deep into it because I just really wanted to finish that second phase of underwriting so that you can start wrapping your mind around how we conduct preliminary underwriting with those 6 data points to start making calls and getting some responses. And then once we make calls, reach out to people and get somebody to respond and get the agreement that they want to do business with us, we gather more facts. We conduct our post-contact underwriting while we're preparing to go visit the property to ensure that the house is still there, get contracts and documents signed so that we can move into our due diligence phase. Does everybody understand what we've covered so far? Like, that's the game right there. That is the deal. That's where your money is. Because you don't have to go through that due diligence and the other stuff if you're a wholesaler. You could probably push that off to somebody else. If you're a deal finder, or even when you're the end buyer, the investor, it just makes it easy because you have a really good idea of how much money you're going to make out of this. So the other part that I wanted to mention, once you do determine your cost of acquisition, your cost of disposition, you have to now determine what is the best exit strategy for you. So your exit should be determined by what the deal tells you it can do in terms of the type of strategy and the type of money. You got to remember this, especially when you're doing creative deals like Subject 2. Let me say it again. When you're gathering the metrics and the numbers to determine what are your acquisition costs, what are your disposition costs, and you're going to use those total numbers to put against certain exit strategies, your exit should be determined by what the deal tells you it can do. You can't tell the deal, oh, I'm going to fix and flip this. Well, the deal might not tell you it can do it. Or I'm going to buy and hold it, but it's really a flip. Let me say it again. Your exit should be determined by what the deal tells you it can do in terms of the type of strategy you should use and the type of money you can make. So let me give you an example. Let me just give you a quick example before we go. A fix and flip is for today money. I'm just giving you an example. A wholesale is for today money. Okay? A buy and hold is for tomorrow money. And then you have more creative deals like lease options, or if you get real bougie and sophisticated, wraps. This is going to be for today and tomorrow money. Now, again, on my worksheet, which you can download in the description, I show you how to calculate the percentage of the loan to value that shows you exactly what exit strategy works best for you. So for example, for fix and flips, this strategy works best when your total acquisition is below 75% LTV. All right. So that means if you took the total dollar amount that it took for you to acquire that property and you divided that dollar amount into the after repair value of that property or the resale value of that property, if it's below 75%, that deal is telling you it should be a fix and flip. If it's 75 to 80%, it's showing you that it could be a wholesale. If it's 75 to 85, buy and hold. If it's 85% and up LTV, it would need owner finance or some type of lease option. So I know that's getting into the weeds and getting a little complicated, but hopefully you have wrapped your mind around why underwriting deals is like the secret sauce to your success. Whether you are a deal finder, wholesaler, acquisition team member, or the end buyer, real estate investor, underwriting is the secret sauce that you have to learn. So I hope you learned something tonight. I just wanted to come back. I mean, last night we did part one. I wasn't even planning on coming back tonight until I got to the office this morning. I was like, you know what? Let's do the doggone thing. I'm going to just come right back. I don't want you to wait a week for part two. But again, you can go into the description, download this worksheet. It's free. You don't have to pay for it. Just download it. Go to my university web platform, and you can download it from that module. It's free. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach back out to me and my team. Our information to contact us is in the description. You will see a link to our programs that we offer. We have a mentorship program. We host bi-weekly creative real estate meetups right here in Atlanta at my headquarters. Next Saturday, May the 11th, we'll be hosting another one. So if you're anywhere near or plan on being near Metro Atlanta and you would like to join us, contact me with the information you see in the description, and my team and I, we will make sure we put you on the schedule to join us. So I appreciate you all for joining me tonight. Please leave some feedback in the comments. Let me know what you think about tonight's masterclass. And if you were here yesterday, let me know how both parts have helped you to see it differently. I'm going to do my best to come back regularly as many nights as I can. Of course, I'm not going to do it tomorrow because we got Bible study. But most likely, if I'm not able to make it back this week, we'll definitely come back next Tuesday and Wednesday. But all you need to do is make sure that you are subscribed to my YouTube page. You follow me on social media, turn your notifications on. I mean, if you know anything about me and my community, you should already be on our email list. If you're not, when you click any of those links, it'll prompt you to one of our platforms where you can sign up and be a part. So I appreciate you all. Thank you. Again, we want to help you. We want to help you do deals. This information that I'm sharing with you and all the other information that we share, you could do this in any state. You could do creative real estate investing anywhere. It works anywhere. It's not a certain area that it works in and another area that it don't work in. Yes, there may be some legalities, but once you put a team of people together in your area, the people that you need to have on your team, like, you can start this process right here. If you just took what we talked about the last 2 nights and just started doing that, even if you don't know what to do. This is one of the reasons why I have these meetups every 2 weeks, because I have people that show up here, they're just learning this stuff. But I'm telling them, listen, just start doing what I'm showing you. And if you get somebody to respond, just schedule a time to talk to them. And guess what? I'll get on the phone. My team will get on the phone, especially if you're a part of our community. So thank you for joining us for part 2. Hit the like button, hit the share button, leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. And if there's anything else we can do to help you along the way, we're here to help make that happen. This is the time for you to get into real estate investing. The next 3 years or so are going to be spectacular if you get into it now and learn this stuff and start taking action. Start taking action. Your life is going to be different in the next 3 years. And I want to be a part of that. So thank you all. Appreciate all the comments and the feedback. And we will keep you posted on the next one. Most likely, if I don't get a chance to come back maybe Saturday or Sunday for another one, we'll be back next Tuesday or Wednesday. I like the Tuesdays and Wednesdays to do them 2 days in a row. We can take certain topics in real estate, talk about it, break it up in 2 nights, and give you a chance to get a lot of information. I'm gonna work on doing that. But appreciate you all. Thank you all. And we'll see y'all